Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. So I've been digging into this huge question lately. What exactly makes some organizations practically bulletproof while others are just constantly running around putting out fires? If you've ever felt like your company is drowning in bloated inventory, or maybe you've tried launching these big strategic initiatives that just kind of fizzle out the second they hit the factory floor, well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to construct the ultimate operational blueprint to fix that using three absolutely essential pillars: strategy, execution, and culture. And look, we need this blueprint right now. Here's a pretty stark reality check for you. Research shows that when forecast accuracy drops below 70%, which, let's be honest, is practically inevitable today, traditional forecast-driven supply chain models just completely fall apart. It creates this massive cascading planning failure. The errors multiply at every single level of your bill of materials, setting off a wild bullwhip effect. Suddenly, you're sitting at a warehouse full of things you absolutely don't need while facing massive shortages of the things you actually do. So that leaves us with a really critical question, right? How on earth do we actually thrive in a VUCA world? Now, VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This isn't a temporary glitch. It's the new normal in modern supply chain management. Our old systems, they were built for a world of stability, but we are living in a world of extreme variability. The stakes really couldn't be higher. To get to the bottom of this, here is our game plan for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the modern operational crisis. Then, we'll dive into Pillar 1, Hoshin Conry for strategy. Next up is Pillar 2, the DDMRP revolution for execution. After that, we'll explore Pillar 3, the Shingo model for culture. And finally, we're going to integrate all of that into our ultimate blueprint. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the modern operational crisis, and specifically the complete failure of forecasting. You know, traditional material requirements planning, or MRP, relies almost entirely on forecast-driven planning. Basically, you're forced to just push inventory into the system based on educated guesses. And this leads to what supply chain professionals call the nervousness problem. It's these frequent, disruptive changes to production plans that create absolute chaos on the floor. But in our VUCA reality, we just can't afford to push materials based on forecasts anymore. We absolutely need agile, real-time demand responses to avoid those extreme shortages. Long story short, we have to stop trying to forecast the unpredictable. Moving on to part 2, let's look at Pillar 1, Hoshin Conry, which is all about setting our strategic direction. Look, before we can even think about fixing how we execute or flow materials, we have to fix how we plan. Because you can't possibly align your execution if you have no idea where the whole organization is actually heading. Hoshin Conry is a Japanese term that roughly translates to policy management, but the literal characters are built from elements meaning compass and direction. Think about it. In uncharted VUCA territory, your entire organization needs a map and a compass. Hoshin Conry acts like a giant magnet, pulling the entire company together so everyone is committed to the exact same method, moving in the exact same direction. So, how does this actually work in practice? Well, the methodology breaks down into 4 core sequential steps. First up, you've got to establish your true north. That's your guiding long-term vision. Second, you ruthlessly narrow your focus down to just 3 three-year breakthrough objectives. What absolutely must you achieve in the next 36 months? And honestly, choosing what not to do here is crucial. Third, you define your annual objectives and quarterly improvement priorities. And finally, you execute and relentlessly review everything through plan, do, check, act cycles. It's brilliant because it links this grand, long-term vision directly to immediate boots-on-the-ground quarterly actions. But here is where Hoshin Conry totally breaks away from standard, boring corporate planning. The real secret sauce is a process called catchball. Think of it as this unique, highly collaborative process where objectives are literally tossed back and forth, top down and bottom up, to build true alignment. It totally prevents that classic dysfunctional scenario we all know, where leadership just shouts mandates from the top floor and prays they miraculously work out on the line. The benefits of playing catchball like this are absolutely huge. By bringing the actual accountable owners into the mix early on, teams genuinely understand their brief. They actually get the time to question it, crunch the numbers on the real resource implications, and collaboratively modify the objective. By the time the plan is finalized, you've secured genuine commitment. People own the plan because, well, they helped build it. So when it's finally time to execute, it's swift, seamless, and incredibly efficient. Okay, let's dive into part 3. This is Pillar 2, the DDMRP revolution, focusing on executing material flow. Remember how we talked earlier about the total failure of forecasting? Well, traditional setups are push systems. They force inventory down the pipeline based on projections, which just magnifies that terrible bullwhip effect. But DDMRP, which stands for Demand-Driven Material Requirements Planning, is completely different. It's a pull system. Instead of guessing, DDMRP places strategic decoupling points throughout your supply chain. These points act as absolute firewalls. They stop the bullwhip effect dead in its tracks, and they only pull inventory through based on actual real-time consumption signals. It's a total game changer. Let's rapidly run through the 6 operational components of DDMRP. First, you strategically decouple your supply chain. Then, step 2, you set up buffer profiles and levels. It's kind of like a traffic light system. Green is for your average order frequency, yellow covers your consumption during lead time, and red is your safety net for handling wild variability. Step 3 allows those buffers to dynamically adjust when market conditions change. Step 4 is planning based on actual sales orders, so again, pulling, not pushing. Step 5 is all about highly visible, collaborative execution using alerts. And step 6 is tactical adaptation, meaning the system is continuously learning and evolving based on its own performance. So what's the actual payoff when you ditch forecasting for this demand-driven pull execution? You get an astonishing number, 97 to 100%. Organizations using DDMRP are routinely hitting near-perfect on-time fill rates. I mean, that is just an incredible level of customer service, especially in a wildly volatile world. But wait, because it actually gets better. They're hitting those flawless fill rates while simultaneously pulling off this metric, cutting total inventory by 30 to 45%. You are radically reducing the cash you have just sitting around tied up in warehouses, all while delivering a way better result to the customer. That is the sheer power of DDMRP execution. Bringing us to part 4, pillar 3, the Shingo model, which is all about sustaining the cultural foundation. So we've got our strategy mapped out and we have our cutting-edge execution tools. But here is the hard truth. Even the absolute best Hoshin strategy and the sleekest DDMRP tools are going to fall flat on their face if your cultural bedrock just isn't there to support them. This is the core insight from Dr. Shigeo Shingo, one of the real geniuses behind the Toyota production system. The Shingo model operates on a very simple premise. Ideal results require ideal behaviors at all levels. And those behaviors, they don't just happen by accident. Your organizational systems have to deliberately drive them. Honestly, a lot of companies get this totally wrong. They get hyper-tool focused, they'll borrow lean techniques. We've all seen the brand new yellow tape slapped down on the warehouse floor, and they just cross their fingers for quick wins. But without a real, fundamental cultural shift, those gains always just fade away. The Shingo model, on the flip side, is principle-centered. It focuses on building systems that are governed by universal principles, like lead with humility and respect every individual. When you center your work on principles, you foster natural, deeply sustainable cultural behaviors. Operational excellence just becomes part of your company's DNA. This whole concept is beautifully mapped out in the Shingo Diamond framework. If you look at it, right at the top you have your results, your goals and metrics. Right below that are your systems and your tools and techniques, but down at the very bottom, forming the foundational bedrock of the whole diamond, are cultural enablers, the principles. The logic flows like this. Principles inform your systems then drive the daily behaviors of your teams, and ultimately those behaviors produce the results you're after. And when you actually take the time to embed these principles deep into your culture, the results are staggering. Organizations that truly implement the Shingo model principles have reported up to an 85% improvement in operational efficiency. And honestly, this next number is just as important, a 60% spike in employee engagement. Principle-centered work benefits the actual human beings on the shop floor just as much as it helps the process and the balance sheet. Think about it. When you truly lead with humility and respect every individual, people actually want to show up to work, solve problems, and make the system better. Finally, we arrive at part 5, integrating the ultimate blueprint and tying it all together. What's amazing is how these 3 methodologies just complement each other so perfectly. Hoshin Kanri provides the strategy. That's your compass, setting the direction so everybody is perfectly aligned. Then DDMRP provides the execution. It's the engine pulling material and protecting the flow of value through a really crazy, volatile market. And finally, the Shingle model provides the culture. It's the foundation that sustains the right behaviors to keep the entire operation running smoothly. 3 distinct systems, all coming together to form one single, unbreakable organizational design.
So, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to chew on. Is your organization actually transforming its core behaviors, or are you just borrowing some flashy lean tools and hoping for the best? Because let's face it, in a VUCA world, hope is definitely not a strategy, but an integrated blueprint of strategy, execution, and culture. That is exactly how you win. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the tools you need to completely rethink your operational foundations.